is Jiayi Liang. I was born and raised in Changsha, China, and studying art studio at in Albuquerque, where I currently reside. I got my first camera from my father when I was in the middle school, and yes, he was my first photo teacher. Influenced by his atheism, I've had a dream about to be a National Geographic photographer, and that's my motivation to be here. In my 4-year academic studying process, I totally betrayed my original motivation and decided to be an artist. And my science officially turns from focusing the world to myself. It took me a year and a half to create the body of the works for my honored thesis show called Don't Tell Your Mom. I'll start with my background. I grew up in a traditional Chinese family, and I was educated to be a good kid with moral habits from Confucian thinking in order to have the support from my family. I kind of remember when I was young, around 5 or 4, my family and I were watching a Chinese romantic drama at home during the dinner. There was a couple going to kiss in the drama show. Then the dramatic reaction from my family happened. My grandma made an excuse to turn it to another channel. My grandma pretended that she was busy on the washing dishes, then walked away to the kitchen. And my father coughed, then pretended to read a newspaper to cover his face. I couldn't remember what I was doing, but I'm pretty sure I was very embarrassed. The subtle understanding between them became their unconscious response to the sex. Because of it, keep silence and escape seemed more feasible to solve problems and diffuse embarrassment around sex to me. When I was 5 years old, I experienced unthinkable sexual abuse by my uncle because of the influence and the reaction towards the sex from my parents. I decided to keep this bad encounter as a dark secret for a long time. I thought that I have to fake it till I make it, so I tried to escape from these memories as a solution, and that might help distract me from the hurt. Unfortunately, that didn't even help at all. This worst experience had crept into the river of my whole memories and gradually took over my life. It took me every day to battle the harm, and I feel ashamed of myself every time when something reminds me of it. When there are a lot more children sexual abuse cases that are exposed in the recent years in China, which encourages me to talk about my story. So I gave it a try to expose my story under the sun as a cure for myself. And that's how this body of works was born as well. It was definitely hard to start this project. I had to put myself into the scenario of the traumatic memory, and then trying hard to remember some details from it, then took notes. But I also found ways to express my story. Metaphor became a melody that indirectly depicts my traumatic memories and my response from it through my project. I melted my traumatic memories into the symbolic materials in my work. They're my body, flowers, paths, bandanas, telephone, and embossed book. The symbols communicated my narrative structure of my project in the form of a metaphor. So it functions both the bridge and the border. As the former, it presents the part that I would express. The latter implies how much should be hidden behind. Here it is the lumen prints, which is one of the or a native photographic process. I use a fiber paper to make my photos, which is a chemical photo paper for developing films. This process requires me to put flowers on the paper to expose it under the sunlight. After you remove the flower from it, the paper already captured a photo of it, which is also a metaphor of exposing my traumatic memories under the sun. All details of flowers are reviewed on the 44-inch photo paper, and it invites people to read and ponder my art. Because it is also a metaphor of exposing my secret under the sun as another layer. As I talk about the flowers as a metaphor, they're very easy to find in my works. Because of the appearance of the flower, it is descriptive of the female. I also learned a flower has been used to depict children in Chinese culture. The flower is a symbol for children being the hope and the best wish for a country. When flower became a symbol for these two different groups of people, it accidentally touched into my concept of the project. Flowers are embedded into most of my photographs, became a kind of melody. It is in extreme contrast with the description of how the societies use flower to characterize women and children. I use the lemon print to entice viewers and to speak to the irony of the flower as a symbol. Let's go to these two photos. I wrote "Don't tell your mom" in Chinese on the pad. On these photos, I used the same object and the stage, but just like different exposure. In my exhibition, I used this photo on the left as the first one to start it, and the one with the overexposure is at the end of my show. I made this photo on the right side that as an accident when I was testing my camera in the lighting studio. Then I found something very interesting to me. Because of the wrong light, it erased the text on the pad. Looks like nothing on it. That reminds me of my action of trying to erase the dark memories from my mind, and I see it in a very poetic way to present my ideas. Also, with the overexposure, we can see there are some scratches on the background, but we're not able to see them when it's on the right light. I understand it as a way when you're trying to erase something by yourself, there's still something on it and it cannot be removed at all. So this accident photo unconsciously became a metaphor towards my project. Compared to the blood relations, strangers and friends and their lack of intimacy makes me more willing to share my stories. Even though I wasn't able to avoid the verbal effect. While I was sharing my story to people, I collected some of their response and then made this embossed book. This book is a little hard to read because it has no ink on it. Sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable and then I couldn't handle it very well with these reactions from people. So this text on the book are not easy to read. People are allowed to use a flashlight for making some shadows in a dark place to help to read it. This action is kind of like when you open an intimate secret in the dark. Also, that's the reason I want to put the embossed book in the black box. When you come to my show, you will see the decoration might be a little different than the others. I broke out of the traditional I love decoration into a new way. And I don't think a gallery is just in a gallery for displaying art pieces. I see it as a part of my works. In this curation, gallery plays the role of a container of my memories. It also functions as an intimate place, which connects me and viewers for communication. Not only it keeps a certain amount of my privacy, but also allows people to have an experience of immersion so they can sense my traumatic story through my works. Contrast to the eye-level creation, I let photos randomly stay on a wall that look like fragments of my memories, which is more related to my ideas of expressing my trauma. And that's why you see some photos are on a big size, but some are very small in a corner. In this space, I encourage multiple voices and free interpretation to understand my work. Meanwhile, the audience can use a combination of literacy and the original information that are given by my works to inform the diverse understanding towards my personal experience. My project shares a story of how I had a traumatic experience, then found a path to live in my life and keep holding on to hope. Before, I always felt like art was far away from me, and I had always thought that art was independent of my personal life. It's a part of my life, but could never melt it into my life. Then I realized that artists should find a way to get along with art at the same time. And that's why I open my arms to art and the invitation. It's an invitation at this point. In my adolescent year, I thought that it requires more courage to face my trauma, and selective amnesia was relatively an easier option. In my full-year academic career, my mind has been changed by contemporary art through reading and exploring. Its inner meaning plays a role of empathy, which is able to heal a group of people who have had a similar experience as me. Although I can't avoid exposing my suffering under the sun, that's the way that I invite art to coexist in my body and embed it into my life, to breathe, experience, and move forward together. Thank you.